Welcome back to Travel Market Life, and aren't we pumping these episodes out? We are now on episode 12, and we're going to be looking at the media, PR, content, and marketing. And this is a really peculiar time because, as we know, every single newspaper, broadcast is all talking about COVID-19 and the current situation, which is really very much an anomaly. So we're going to be joined by Jill Starley-Grainger, who is a former Which travel magazine editor and former commissioning editor for the Sunday Times travel magazine. So she certainly should know her stuff. She's currently writing for jetjourneys.com and is also a media commentator right now for travel for COVID-19. Hello to you, Jill. How are things going for yourself there?
Yeah, fine, thanks. I mean, as well as can be expected for all of us in the industry.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, you've made your bread and butter really dealing with the media, writing and covering a lot of things going on in travel right now. And you're on the media circuit talking to a lot of broadcasters about the current situation. What's the current thing they're really wanting to know from you and the sort of content you're having to provide to them?
So with the TV and radio, what they're primarily focused on now is as the customer rights, consumer rights. And so right now I'm primarily talking about what your rights are in relation to canceled trips, anything to do with travel insurance, that sort of thing. So that's the main focus right now. Of course, it depends on the time of year. Sometimes I'm talking about the best destinations to visit, which is a much lovelier topic to talk about, or what the hot new trend is. But right now, unfortunately, it's all about those consumer rights.
Yeah, I guess that the media plans, content plans have gone out the window for a lot of travel editors right now. And as a former commissioning editor, how would you be looking at filling your pages?
So what most of the newspapers and magazines and websites are doing is they are very much switching to either dream trips. So, go ahead and plan your 2021 holiday, that sort of thing. Or they're trying to do virtual travel experiences, books about travel, films about travel, travel recipes. So it's all that non-travel stuff that we can focus on to link to destination content. So recipes are quite popular. If you're dreaming about going to Italy but you can't go, here are some recipes from local regions that you could try to recreate the experience in your own home. So that's what they're focused on right now. I don't know how long they're going to sustain it. And almost all of them have downsized significantly. So there just simply isn't as much content.
Yeah, I mean, I guess they've got their internal teams and they've used a lot of freelancers. I mean, that's really the way the industry has been moving a lot over the last few years, to not have such a big core team internally. So if you're looking at doing PR or getting some inches column spread, what are going to be the opportunities right now? Is it by feeding this sort of lifestyle content that goes around travel, or are you about tapping into some of the harder news stories around sort of the refunds, the cancellations, and the rebooking policy and the delivery?
So certainly the in-house teams are doing a lot on the refund situation, on cancellations, that sort of thing. Making headway by sending general press releases right now, I don't think you're going to get very far unless you are really doing something extraordinary linked to COVID-19. So maybe your team is now volunteering at the local hospital because they're not working, they're all furloughed, so you've all decided to volunteer together. Maybe you get some headway there. Otherwise, the only way really I think you're going to get coverage from press releases right now is if you are showing what your company is doing to help protect guests in the future. And that's going to be a theme that should run throughout all of your communications. And unless you're doing something really extraordinary, or unless you produce some amazing video content, even that probably isn't going to get very far, because that's what I'm getting in my inbox all the time. Oh, these are the new procedures. Well, you and everybody else are all doing those. So it would have to be exceptional. And then, beyond that, the best way is to be reactive really quickly. I'm amazed when I've put out requests. I'm working on odds and ends still, and when I put out requests, so many people just aren't replying at all, or they'll get back to me a week later. Well, deadlines,
Really?
unfortunately, and you're like, well, we know you're not busy. I have a deadline. I've just been commissioned to do this piece. I've got to get it in the next sort of 24, 48 hours. Getting back to me a week later is not going to work. So being extremely reactive to anything you see. on those places like Trav Media, on LinkedIn or Twitter, where you see journalist requests?
No, I mean that's great to know. I mean, I've been using those, pretty much every single day. As soon as I see an opportunity, I've always
Yeah.
jumped at it immediately. I mean, even if they say the deadline's in 3 days, get that notice out to them immediately, because they're only going to look at the first few, and once
Yeah.
they've got the content that they want, anything else that comes through, don't need it. And I guess as well, everyone's going to be looking towards the larger businesses. What are they doing? How are they leading this? What's the best practice that they're trying to achieve? So I guess if you're a smaller business, it's going to be a little bit of a waste of time trying to create new policies and procedures that maybe aren't following what some of the more larger international businesses are doing, right? Because the spotlight's going to be on these big companies.
Yeah, I mean, unless you're going to invest some real time and money into creating some sort of viral video content that maybe is amusing, that might just get some airplay. I just really think right now the best way is to be reactive. And it's not going to hurt for you to put out a press release saying these are what your protocols are, but don't really expect a massive amount of uptake on that. And also just nurturing those journalist relationships. Now's a great time just to book in the occasional Zoom coffee meeting with what you think might be some key journalists, if they have time. Lots of people obviously might not, but if they do, now's a good time to do that, and just to chat and see how everybody's doing and thinking about the future. That's what I'm doing with some of my favorite PRs. Is we're just having coffee and having a general chinwag and a moan about the business. So it's really about relationships.
Yeah, and then this is what we've been talking about across the entire industry. If you've got a few hours spare each week, it's a great time to try to pick up the phone or even just drop a courtesy email to see how they're doing, what sort of content they might be looking at. I also know that quite a few journalists are on part-time because of either the type of content that's coming through, or the fact that there isn't the advertising there. There isn't the, these businesses are still running. These magazines, newspapers still have to provide news, but they're not getting the income they were because people aren't investing, right?
That's right. I mean, freelance journalists like myself and lots of other freelance journalists, we've lost, 50, 75% of our travel journalist income overnight. Nobody is commissioning, and the content they are commissioning is minimal. So it's really, now is not a great time to push a journalist. Oh, you did this press trip in January. When's it going to get coverage? Well, nobody knows. It was due to go in earlier. Who knows? So it's not a good time to put pressure on journalists who themselves may well be wondering about how they're even going to pay the bills. It's more just about, nurturing those relationships, chatting to them, and being ready to pounce if somebody does put something out there. So, I did something about learning holidays recently. So that's something that's sort of a positive thing you might want to book for 2021. But still, though, some people, of course, are very reactive. But as you say, the ones who get in there quickly, give you the crucial information, as is always the case, they're the ones you're more likely to use. But I would say right now is a really good time to focus on internally all that stuff that you feel like you never have enough time to do. And it might be your communication strategy for next year. All of that sort of thing. Now's a good time to take a step back and do that.
Yeah, I mean, content is a big thing, and we've seen this big move over the last 5 or 6 years towards more dynamic content, more regular content, owned content versus paid and earned content. And this idea of the owned content side of things. What should a content strategy look like for a consumer travel organization, and what could they be thinking about? What sort of ideas to bring into their communication strategy?
Yeah, so I have been doing some content strategy for some clients in the run up to this, and it's very difficult to do great content strategy anyway, but it was easier then because you could look at the last 1 to 2 years of data to try to feed into it. Well, the last 1 to 2 years of data is of no use to anybody anymore. So what you're having to do now, when you go into Google Analytics, you go into things like SEMrush, HubSpot, etc., wherever you're going to look to see what trends are happening, you're really just looking at the last month or two. And of course, that's not necessarily going to tell you what's going to happen when lockdown eases. But when you are looking at it, do try to focus on what people have been worried about in the short term. And so we know that things they've been worried about in the short term are getting their money back. So cancellation policies would be a big thing. Lots of people used to have very strict cancellation policies. If you want to entice people back, now's the time to really rethink those. And you might think, oh, but I can't afford to do it. well, in some ways you can't afford not to do it. So
Mm.
if you can have a completely flexible cancellation policy, that, maybe says you can cancel and get all of your money back up until, 30 days before booking. And if there's still an issue with COVID-19, well, certainly even after that, we give you your money back. You're much more likely to get people willing to take the risk simply because it's not a risk. If you're asking people to risk huge amounts of money when they don't know what's going to happen in the future, that's not going to help. So have a look at that. People are concerned about getting their money back. People are also concerned about hygiene. That's going to be the key thing going forward. What are you doing? We've seen what some airlines have done. I don't know. Have you been watching what the airlines have been doing on the hygiene front at all?
I've heard bits and pieces. Give us a download.
So there are two quite different approaches. Well, there's lots of different approaches, but two of the major ones. Delta came out really strongly very early on. Videos all about its hygiene protocols, everything it's been doing. It's really been pushing that hygiene messaging. And I think Delta will therefore come out more strongly once people do start flying again, because they have built up that trust. People are like, right, we see Delta is taking this seriously. Another airline, who I probably shouldn't name, another airline has come out and it's put out this video. It's put out all this hygiene messaging, and it includes things such as the fact that they will be doing a thorough disinfect of the plane every evening. That's not good enough anymore. We thought you were doing that in the past. What, you weren't doing a thorough disinfect of the plane every evening? No.
Yeah.
So is it going to be the same thing for hotels, for B&Bs, for villas? So what a lot of the bigger hoteliers are doing now is they're saying, right, what we're going to do is in between each guest, we're not going to allow any bookings for that room for 72 hours. We will go in and do a thorough disinfect, but we're still taking that extra precaution because we know that the virus can live on surfaces, depending on the type of surface, for several days. So we'll do a thorough disinfect. This is everything we're doing. And then we're also just not going to take bookings for that room for 72 hours. And that'll help put people's mind at rest. Some hotels are saying they're not even going to do cleanings while you're in the room. They will give you your sheets to do yourself if you need your bedding change, to try to keep the cleaners from going in and potentially causing the germs. So I think hygiene is really important. Cancellation policies are really important. Those are the big things, the messaging you really need to get across. And then you can also talk about all the positives as well.
I mean, it is always at a time when something is disrupted, especially in travel, that you need that sense of security, trust, and confidence. And you've got the early travelers, the travelers that are going to take off as soon as they're allowed to, and they're going to be the ones that are really going to help build that confidence. And I guess tapping into those type of bookers initially will help you with reassuring future guests and travelers. But I guess, as you say, what about the inspiration? How about keeping in contact with their database, for example? They can't be pushing. Can they be pushing sales right now, or what should they be getting out there in order to send them content that's valuable, worthwhile reading? Because otherwise, it's just the same old, same old.
So I think what I've seen some companies doing really well now, they aren't pushing sales at all, because there are a lot of issues around that. First of all, most people can no longer get any travel insurance that would cover them for COVID-19. So if they got to your destination and they had to go into quarantine for days, weeks, or months, they would have no financial protection to cover that. So that's a massive risk. So yes, it might be £1,000 or €1,000 booking for you, but that person is risking tens of thousands of pounds. And that's not even to mention if they got sick and had to go into hospital. And in certain destinations, they might be forced to go to private hospitals that could cost them huge amounts of money. So you've got to bear that in mind. So I really do not feel like now is the time to be pushing sales messages. I know that 2021, for dream trips, you could maybe try to incentivize people to put that refundable deposit down for 2021 trips. But I think what I've seen some other people doing, so they're really nurturing that email list. That database list is golden, of course. And they're doing that by sharing destination content that is much more evocative and kind of travel from home, like we were talking about the newspapers doing. So one of the ones that I follow, they've been sending out recipes, which is great. Some of them, you might want to send out a history of your house or your hotel or whatever it is, if it's really interesting. Or if you're a travel agent, you might want to focus on some really niche things that you might not otherwise do that might just bring that destination to life. Now would be a really good time to create a free ebook. Ebooks are not that difficult to create. It doesn't have to be massive. And it could just talk about really quirky and unusual things about the destination that, people aren't going to be visiting the Louvre right now. But if you could maybe focus on some really niche things about maybe a few paintings so that when they do go, oh, did you know the backstory of this painting? So you can really go quite niche and quirky. I think quirky is really a way forward to grab people right now. You could also try doing interviews with some of the local suppliers or some of the local people in your area who, and you could do interviews like this. So it's not in-person interviews. Yeah. Film
Use
these
it
and
Zoom, easy.
yeah, film them and share them. I don't know what. So, I mean, those are the sorts of things that I think really nurturing that list, focusing on hygiene, and also thinking about really your hotel practices as well. If you, or not just your hotel, if you've got a villa, whatever it is, thinking about all of that and trying to get that messaging across without being salesy. Being salesy right now when so many people have lost their jobs is not, it's not a great look. I don't know. What do you think? Maybe I'm being a bit pessimistic there, but that's
No, no,
my
no. I
feeling.
mean, I agree. I think, making sure that you're aware that that the hotel will be open, that you will be taking bookings, that you can
Hmm.
still take bookings right now, I think, or it's really important, even as a travel agent, because you want to make people aware that you're ready to have those conversations. And even if you can't book for the dates that they want to be traveling, or they're not sure about the dates they want to be traveling, you're getting that customer, you're bringing that customer in, which is so important. People want that confidence today more than they ever had done. And
Yeah.
I agree that there's this element of customer service that has been lacking, especially from online travel agents, and been
Mm,
struggling to get hold of people. So providing that higher level of customer service. And I'd say as well, from a content perspective, you touched on different styles of content, different types of content, which really can be used across all the different platforms. You've mentioned some great stuff that would be brilliant for TikTok or for Facebook or for Instagram. And if you've got libraries of images, or if you
yeah, of
are
course.
allowed out the house, I mean, this is a great time to be able to go around your local city where it's empty and take some just spectacular shots whilst you're going on your exercise daily walk, or whatever. And then I guess it's your website. How can you upgrade your website for what people are expecting today? If you don't have a mobile website, if you don't have content
Yeah.
that's searchable for SEO purposes, there's a lot of content that's going to help generate the traffic for the future.
So I think one thing you've touched on there is really important, and that is the fact that people think, all right, well, nobody's booking right now. Why would I bother doing anything to my website? But as
Mm.
we know, when it comes to Google search, the longer content is live, so you want it to be good content, the longer it's there, the higher Google search ranks it. So now is actually a great time so that in 6 months, when people start looking again, or a year, you're ahead of the rest of the people who've just been like, well, we're going to give up. We're not going to do anything until people start booking again. If you are putting out content that people are reading, they're engaging with, by the time this gets there, this is going to be seen as really strong content by Google. So it's a great time to work on your SEO, to work on your content. And I feel like, I know it's one of those phrases that it sounds slightly I don't know, cliched, but being authentic is also really
Mm.
good right now. And you could put on your blog and in your email list your actual struggles. You don't want to complain to make your guests feel bad, but at the same time, I think it's totally fair enough to say, this is what we're having to deal with. So I had an email from one of my lovely, it wasn't a personal email, sorry, but it happened to be from one of my clients. And it was quite shocking, but also I thought, actually, this is appropriate right now. Unfortunately, they lost one of their long time colleagues, and it was
Mm.
an email that was almost like a eulogy to this person. And this is a small company, and this person was integral. And I thought, in normal times you might not do that, but right now this just seems really appropriate. It was handled sensitively, and it just made me feel so much warmer towards this company, that they're more concerned about the fact that their team are at risk and that they have all these wonderful relationships than they are with trying to push sales on me. So you can be authentic, be genuine, be positive as well, but everything doesn't have to be positive right now. We're all struggling. And I think it's totally fair enough for people to try to get that messaging out there as part of the mix. And it will make people feel more personable towards you.
And it's all about collaboration and networks. And we've mentioned that at the very beginning of this conversation, and the opportunities available there. SEO is not just about what you create on your site, but how people talk about you on other sites, and the links that are created that link back to your website. So it's a great opportunity to look at your partners, look at providing them with guest posts, get them to provide you with guest posts or guest content. And then especially if you're working with a lot of local producers, to get an insight to how they work with their produce and how they work with their team, to give that, as you say, that more authentic experience that people will be yearning, I think, to experience for real. And they want to get out there, and they want to see these things that maybe they've taken for granted. But certainly I think this year, people are going to be recognizing the small things in life mean so much more than maybe some of the bigger things that we've been maybe become accustomed to and been drawn to over the last few years.
And I think it's a real opportunity in some ways for small and medium businesses. And of course, we know they've suffered the most. But some of the really major companies they haven't behaved well. And so it's a really good time for those small and medium businesses who might always struggle because you're struggling on price. You can't compete with them on price. But now is the time where people are much more concerned about, can I trust this company? And getting that message across. And who is this company? I'm tired of dealing with these anonymous bots. Like you said earlier, you can't get through on the phone to these people. I mean, you could even maybe set up video calls with your customers now, because people are so much more used to doing that just in the last few weeks. So there are so many ways that you could go about trying to nurture your base and to try to get new people interested. I mean, maybe even just bring out a book of recipes. If you could get some of your local suppliers, maybe you've got, people who deal with wine regions, who are food producers, get them all to provide you their local family recipes, collate it in a free ebook, send it out, and possibly even do that as something like a Facebook ad, put it out on Instagram, etc., where people can click and get it and go to the landing page. That might be a good way to get some new customers it's not a salesy way. It's not, oh, here, book now, which is the typical way that you're doing it.
Yeah, no, certainly. And we actually had a conversation with Rich Hull from Give Pro, who's developed a website called supporthospitality.co.uk. And it's one of the things that they're trying to help do is create more of an e-commerce offering as well for travel companies who are able to work with their local partners and be another supplier to those that maybe traditionally only provided to large companies. I guess as we move forward, there's a lot of plans, a lot of ideas that you suggested. How can you get help? Certainly for me, for small businesses, those who aren't familiar with digital marketing and content, HubSpot is a brilliant resource with thousands of guides on types of content and how to structure content. Any other resource that you would recommend for people to get support on creating their content plans?
Yeah, so HubSpot is a great one. I love Neil Patel as well. But when you're I think email is really important right now. And there are a couple of things that you can do with your emails to help improve your email open rates, because obviously there's no point creating your blog if nobody's reading it. So you create the blog, you send it out to social, you put it out to your email list. For your email list, if you look online for something called headline analyzers, or email subject line analyzers. There are a few that I use regularly just to check that my email subject lines or my headlines in my blog post are actually achieving what I want them to achieve. I find them really valuable, and you can take it with a pinch of salt, but they can be really helpful in trying to increase those open rates. And always with emails, think about those first 3 words of every email. So many people will send out an email with the first 3 words are email newsletter. Well, that's really not interesting. If your first 3 words are, my mom's recipe for whatever, I'm much more likely to open it than I am if you just have a generic email newsletter. And I think one thing that is also really important is that people really need to think local, 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 because what's likely to happen in the short term is that your audience, which might have been coming from further afield, is now going to be much more local. It might be people who are just an hour away, people who might not otherwise have gone to you because they were too close. When things open, that's the first people who are going to be looking to travel. So try to focus on them. What does your local audience want? How can you help them? Think short haul, close, trains, driving, all of that. So yeah, I realize that's not necessarily a resource, but it was just another thing that I think I'm sure people were already thinking of that, but I think that's something to really focus your content strategy on right now.
No, certainly. I think you gave some pointers for some really good resources online for people to help them to help people with their emails. So that was really insightful. I never even thought about some of those things. So thank you very much for sharing that with us, Jill. And time's nearly up. So Jill, thank you for joining us. Good luck on the media circuit, and I hope that we can start talking about actual travel sooner rather than later, and not just about our dreams.
Yeah.
But do keep in contact with us, and perhaps we can have a catch up in a few more weeks' time to see how things are going.
Yeah. Thanks a lot.
Wonderful. Take care. Okay, so thanks for joining us for episode 11, looking at everything across the media and content and what you can be doing in order to make sure that you're more visible and really talking to an audience at a time when it really is quite sensitive and the narrative is just constantly the same old thing. What can you be doing to distract people from the daily onslaught of COVID-19 news stories? So really think outside the box there. If you need any help, don't hesitate to get in contact with my agency, Haynes Marcoms, or certainly some of our guests who will all be able to provide you with some advice and information on what you can be doing now. Thanks for joining us. You can check out all the episodes on travelmarket.life, and we'll be back soon with another episode. Take care.